Welcome to the Chilling Ghost Stories channel. Today we bring you a famous Chinese ghost story titled The Moonlight Mystery. If you enjoy the story, please give us a like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you. Now let's get started.
Chapter 14. The Source of Terror. The ear-piercing screeching sound emanating from the two headphones rhythmically echoed into her eardrums, its tempo resembling footsteps, almost like a heartbeat. Every time it sounded, Yashin would shiver with goosebumps. She lifted her head, her whole body trembling. On the frequency spectrum of the equalizer, a cluster of sound waves appeared, moving across in perfect rhythm. Only sound could be displayed on the equalizer screen, but at that moment, she could barely breathe, so where was this sound coming from? Everything around her was deathly silent. The wooden door had blocked out all the noise of the rain outside, so where were the sound waves coming from? Yashin carefully plugged the jack into the speakers, and immediately static noises like electric interference emerged, but they weren't like ordinary sound interference, they had a distinct rhythm. The rhythm was slower than a heartbeat, but faster than breathing. Yashin began pacing back and forth in the room, each step synchronized with the sound. The sound was very much like slow footsteps. But clearly, she couldn't hear any footsteps. She stepped in time with the rhythm and reached the door, yanking it open forcefully. But there was no noise outside, the building was eerily quiet. She looked down the spiral staircase, under the dim light, there was nothing there. For a moment, she felt a sense of relief. But suddenly, the hallway ahead darkened, the lights went out. Yashin felt her body freeze. She turned around and looked at the equalizer. The peaks of the sound waves on the screen were growing higher, the strange intensity of the sound coming through the amplifier was increasing, it was as if the footsteps were getting closer. Why am I still standing here? Yashin cursed herself. She quickly shut the door, locked it, and leaned her back against it, breathing softly, as though trying to keep distance from the impending danger. After locking the door, the strange sound coming through the speakers diminished, but then it gradually grew louder again. Yashin thought, could something really unusual be about to appear? Or is a ghost about to show up? Oh, Xie Xuan, where are you? Even if it were a ghost, why should she be afraid? There were lights in the house, as long as there were lights. As soon as she thought of that, the lights went out. Yashin was startled by these sudden events. In the dark, she stood frozen like a statue, then began to shiver uncontrollably. She imagined Xie Sun's voice whispering in her ear, "Don't be afraid." Yashin almost burst into tears. The strange sound continued to rise slowly, the sound waves on the equalizer screen were still fluctuating, the peaks were getting higher. Was there any logical explanation for this? The electrical supply panel for the radio station was located on the third-floor corridor wall. The equipment here was working normally, only the lights were out. Or perhaps someone was causing trouble. Maybe some mischievous student was tampering with the power, and the electrical anomalies and magnetic fields were causing the equalizer to pick up signals. The strange sound kept growing louder. Yashin walked over, unplugged the jack, but the sound persisted as before. Why did all of this seem so familiar? Yashin suddenly remembered the diary entry about the Moonlight Society, where the student Tiao had first encountered the ghosts of the Moonlight Society. Although they had cut the power, the turntable was still running. Suddenly, everything fell silent. The speakers returned to being an unused wooden box, with no connection, and the electrical signals on the equalizer screen vanished, leaving only a fluorescent hue. In the silence, the only sound she could hear was her own heartbeat. The rain and wind had passed, or perhaps a bigger storm was about to strike. The silence lasted about 10 seconds, then the speakers suddenly erupted with ear-splitting static noises, shrieking wildly as if wanting to tear her apart. The rhythmic sound waves on the equalizer were replaced by grotesque sine waves, rising and falling, like a mad artist torturing a canvas with a paintbrush. Yashin suddenly felt a splitting headache, the violent static seemed to transmit deep into her brain, and for a moment, she lost consciousness. When she regained her senses, the static had vanished, and the screen was no longer showing any distorted signals. Everything around her was completely silent. But then, a faint scratching sound echoed. Yashin suddenly realized that she had been so flustered earlier that she forgot to turn off the recorder. The chaotic noises in the room had undoubtedly been recorded. She had an idea and walked to the desk, speaking into the recorder. "I am Yashin, it is now about 10 p.m. on May 11th. A few minutes ago, strange electrical waves appeared on the equalizer screen, and sounds came from the speakers. At first, they had a rhythm and grew louder with time. Then, the lights at the station went out, and the sound became erratic and very shrill. Now it is very quiet, but I am really scared, truly terrified." Yashin had expressed her fears, feeling slightly relieved, but the terror did not subside. Scratch, scratch. The strange sound began again, starting quietly and then growing louder. "I have to do something." The first thought that crossed her mind was to smash the speakers, but she knew that would be useless, so she considered other more proactive approaches. The room was equipped with an internal telephone, and she could call the security room, but that would be like walking into a trap. Would it be less terrifying to be in a mental hospital than standing here? A thought suddenly crossed Yashin's mind. She groped in the dark and made her way to the window, opening the wooden frame. From there, she looked far into the distance, spotting the dim light on the second floor of a small building. She identified that the light was likely from the office of Professor Zhang Wenguan in the anatomy wing. Yashin silently muttered, "Thank goodness." She fumbled around for a moment, finally finding a few notebooks. She brought them in front of the glowing screen of the equalizer and searched for the university directory. Flipping through quickly, she muttered, "Anatomy Research and Teaching Office." Finally, Yashin found the phone number for that office. With trembling hands, she dialed the number. The phone rang once, twice. She whispered to herself, "Please, pick up. Please pick up," but there was no answer. Just when she had almost lost hope, the ringing stopped, and someone finally picked up the phone. It was Professor Zhang Wengun's voice. "Hello, this is Zhang Wengun speaking." "Professor Zhang, it's Yashin," she almost cried out, her voice trembling. "Yashin, where are you? Your voice sounds strange. The whole school has been looking for you since this afternoon." Clearly, Professor Zhang was surprised. "I'm scared." Yashin didn't know how to explain her situation. She just blurted out those two words. At that moment, she realized she wasn't as strong as she had thought. "Don't be scared. Where are you? I'll come get you. I'm at the radio station, on the roof of the old administrative building. Please, Professor, come quickly and don't tell anyone, okay? They're planning to send me to the psychiatric hospital. Since you trust me this much, I'll be very careful. First, I'll make sure you're safe, then we'll deal with the rest later. Professor Zhang, be careful. There may be danger in this building." Unfortunately, Professor Zhang hung up the phone. Yashin huddled on the floor, hugging her shoulders. She looked up at the equalizer screen. The peaks of the sound waves continued to rise higher, and the strange sounds from the speaker grew louder. Her limbs trembled uncontrollably. To Yashin, every second felt like an eternity. The eerie sound came closer and closer, and the more she listened, the more it sounded like footsteps slowly approaching. Finally, the speaker seemed to be pushed to its limit, emitting a loud, explosive sound. Yashin quickly covered her ears, thinking, the danger is almost at the door. As expected, there was a violent pounding on the door, shaking the entire room. The banging was so intense that it seemed like they would break down the door soon. Perhaps due to her fear lasting too long, Yashin suddenly felt brave. She stood up slowly, took a deep breath, and gripped the chair in front of the sound system, preparing to throw it at the intruders if the door was breached. The door kept being hammered relentlessly. Clearly, they wanted to get in no matter what. Yashin, it's Zhang Wenguan. Yashin felt her body go weak as if she were about to collapse. There was still hope. Shaking, she went to open the door. Outside, it was pitch dark, but Professor Zhang was holding a large flashlight. Professor Zhang, please come in right now. It's dangerous out there. Yashin urged. What danger? I don't see anything wrong, Professor Zhang said, shining the flashlight around. Wait, the speaker had gone silent. Yashin was stunned, looking back. The sound waves had also disappeared from the equalizer screen. Could it be that the other entity here had been frightened and fled? Maybe the credit went to the flashlight's light, or perhaps it was Professor Zhang's courageous entrance. We should leave quickly, Professor Zhang suggested, clearly uncomfortable in the pitch-black room. Yes, but please come with me to the anatomy building, Yashin requested. Professor Zhang hesitated. You mean, to my office? All right. Why was Professor Zhang hesitant? Yashin could understand. It was late at night, and it wouldn't be appropriate for a young professor to be with a female student alone in a room, especially since she was considered a suspect. Yashin gently said, It's not your office, Professor. I just need you to come with me to the first floor of the anatomy building. Why's that? Professor Zhang asked, sounding surprised. Technician Feng usually works there. I want to visit and see if I can find him. I need to ask him about something important. Afterward, I'll stay overnight in one of the classrooms. I won't let you be implicated. I just hope you don't tell the security or student affairs office, or they'll send me to the psychiatric hospital. Professor Zhang hesitated a little but then agreed, I won't tell anyone. Let's go. The two of them left the old administrative building, sharing an umbrella since it was still raining. Perhaps because of the rain, they didn't encounter anyone on their way. They stepped over the raised cement threshold and opened the door. Inside, the hallway was pitch dark. There was still no sign of light. Zhang Wenguan said, perhaps we shouldn't go in. Clearly, Feng isn't here. As soon as he finished speaking, the hallway lights flickered on. But the hallway remained empty. Is anyone here? Is anyone here? Zhang Wenguan called out, feeling that something was indeed wrong. But Yashin was gradually realizing that the danger was still following her. She didn't want to involve Zhang Wenguan in this. Mr. Zhang, let's go. There's something strange going on here. Feng isn't inside. Is someone playing a ghostly prank? Come out and show yourself. Zhang Wenguan called loudly. Feng is inside, that's the sound of his electric saw. Yashin walked down the hallway and ran straight to the last room. Zhang Wenguan quickly called after her, Yashin, wait, be careful. Perhaps because his shoes were wet, Zhang Wenguan slipped and fell behind. Yashin didn't seem to hear him, and in a flash, she was standing right in front of the door. The door was slightly ajar, and the sound of the electric saw came from within. She reached to push the door open, but her hand hesitated for a moment. She vaguely felt that something was off. No light was coming through the door crack, which was typical since Feng, the old hunchback, had the habit of not turning on the light when working on corpses. However, on a moonless, rainy night like this, how could he work without any light? After a moment of hesitation, Yashin pushed the door open. The door opened, and she froze like a statue. She didn't know whether to trust her own eyes. Her intelligent mind couldn't bear the bizarre, terrifying scene before her. Thanks to the dim light from the hallway, she could see the electric saw running wildly on the table where the corpse was placed. She clearly saw that no one was holding the saw. The electric saw seemed to have a life of its own, operating by itself on the corpse on the table. She could see it clearly now. The corpse had been cut into several pieces. And she saw that the corpse had a bald head and a hunchback. It was Feng. His eyes were wide open, seemingly staring at Yashin, with an expression of pleading, desperation, and a warning. All the fear, pressure, emptiness, and exhaustion she had been carrying for the past few days came crashing down on her. At that moment, she reached her breaking point. Yashin screamed a long, high-pitched scream, breaking the eerie silence of the rainy night in the campus area. Zhang Wenguan ran to her, seeing Yashin collapsed on the floor, trembling violently, still screaming in terror. He bent down, holding her gently, and said in a calm voice, "Yashin, please calm down. Screaming like this will disturb the faculty and staff around here." Though she was on the brink of total collapse, Yashin quickly realized, screaming like this will give me away, just like calling the security staff here. She immediately stopped, silencing her cry, standing up, and running outside. Zhang Wenguan called after her, "Yashin, where are you going?" Yashin stopped, thinking, "Right, where should I go now?" Her mind suddenly felt foggy and empty. She looked back at Zhang Wenguan with a sad and helpless expression, her face drenched with tears. Zhang Wenguan stepped forward and spoke softly, "Here's what we'll do. No matter where you go tonight, I'll go with you." As they were talking, they suddenly heard hurried footsteps. It sounded like many people were running toward them. Yashin thought to herself, "This is bad," realizing she no longer had time to explain to Zhang Wenguan. Without a word, she sprinted out of the building. The moment she stepped outside, a powerful flashlight beam hit her directly in the face, blinding her so she couldn't even open her eyes. Instinctively, she raised her hand to shield her face. A voice called out, "Yashin is here. We found her." Yashin knew it was the staff sent by the school to find her. Without thinking, she bolted toward an area where no one was. She knew that if she kept running on the school grounds, the specialized flashlight would follow her, and they would catch up easily. She had to lose them quickly. In the opposite direction of the morgue was the old administrative building. She remembered that the path inside was very winding, and it might be a good place to hide. She ran straight into the building. She ran up the stairs to the second floor. From below, she could hear a lot of noise. Someone shouted, "The east door is guarded. 2 of you, search each room on the first floor and the basement. Everyone else, follow me upstairs." It was the voice of Wu Ziyong, the deputy head of security. Yashin's legs were trembling. How much longer could she hide? But she refused to surrender. She couldn't let them easily send her to a mental hospital like that. With every 3 steps on the stairs, Yashin continued running upwards. This old administrative building had 5 floors, with a staircase leading straight to the roof. The rooftop was always breezy, with a few cement chairs placed for people to rest. The footsteps were still chasing her, and with no other option left, she ran straight to the rooftop. The drizzle stung her face, but Yashin didn't feel a thing. She ran a little on the rooftop when suddenly a flashlight beam flickered in front of her. Someone else had come up using a different staircase. She was now trapped on both sides. "Hey, Yashin, stop running. Don't you understand the school's good intentions towards you? Oh, if only I were a bird, I could fly away freely." The thought crossed her mind, making her feel that she had changed in a terrifying way. The people chasing her slowed down, forming a circle around her from both sides. She couldn't shake off that terrifying thought, but it seemed like she no longer had the strength to regain her rationality. So, Yashin climbed onto the low wall of the rooftop, which was barely a meter high. Wu Ziyong nodded, muttering, "This is bad." He waved his hand. "Stop, everyone, stop. What is Yashin trying to do? What do you think I'm doing? Can't you see?" Yashin's voice was as cold as the raindrops hitting her face. "Don't do anything rash. We are here to help you, rest assured, the school doesn't misunderstand you. We'll take good care of you. Come down, you haven't even had dinner yet. You must be tired. The school has arranged for you to stay at the guest house, so you can eat, take a shower, and rest. Doesn't that sound good? Next, you'll take me to the mental hospital, right? Wu Ziyong didn't know how to respond, but luckily, Li, the head of Yexin's class, arrived just in time and said, Yexin has always been an intelligent student, how could she? Come down here, and we can talk about it. There's nothing to talk about. I know you can't decide, but I hope you'll ask the school to guarantee that I won't be sent to the mental hospital. Then I'll come down. Li hesitated for a moment, and Wu Ziyong let out a sneer, raising his voice, even if Li can't decide, I can assure you, we will not send you to the mental hospital. Now, come down. I want the school to provide an official document, a legal guarantee with the stamp from the Student Affairs Office. Then I'll come down. Wu Ziyong didn't expect Yexin to be so difficult. He became enraged. Why are you acting like a child? Are you really going to do something reckless? Do you think I'm not serious? I know that among the female students who used to stay in our dorm, 12 have jumped to their deaths, and you've told me there were a few others. How many in total? Perhaps jumping down was the only way to relieve all the sorrow. Wu Ziyong was really furious now. Yexin. A very familiar voice echoed. It was her mother. Xiaoying, accompanied by Jin Duechu, the head of the Student Affairs Office, had arrived. She was staring in shock at the scene before her, covering her mouth with her hand, on the verge of tears. She called out, Yexin, and stood frozen, not knowing what to say. Yexin, look who's here. Jin Duechu was pleased that he had advised Li to inform Xiaoying. She had taken a noon flight to Jiangjing, I see. Yexin said coldly, Mom, why are you here to force me to? After the initial shock of seeing her daughter, Xiaoying regained her composure and gently said, Look, darling. I'm not forcing you. I came to visit you. I haven't agreed to send you to the hospital. I just don't want to lose you. You are the most beloved person in the world to me. She choked on her last words. That last sentence truly moved Yexin. Tears streamed down her face as she stepped down from the rooftop, moving toward her mother and throwing herself into her embrace. She sobbed uncontrollably.